Yesterday we had an enrichment about the residential aspect of Fircroft and how it works, because it's really significantly impactful and profound, and I think so, much more so than is appreciated from outside of it. And it's different to the way that a lot of colleges function. A lot of the way that Fircroft functions is different to the way other colleges function. And I wanted to talk a bit about the residential aspect and the impact that that's had on us, and then also a little bit about the comparison between Fircroft and other colleges and other educational establishments. So, I think starting with the residential aspect, when we were doing short courses here first, short courses are like 3 days, 2 nights, and we'd have like at least 2 weeks, if not a month, between every short course. We did that for about 8 months, so we really built up very slowly, which we had to do to make sure that our brain and our nervous system could deal with it. After the kind of experiences we've had, you need a really slow kind of like graded exposure to make something okay. And what was interesting was, like, if it hadn't been residential, I would have felt it was very inaccessible. Because of our physical disabilities, it wouldn't be accessible for us to come and go every day. Travelling twice a day, every day, for a college course, or travelling every day for a college course is not something our body can do. It would seriously aggravate the disabilities we have, and it would make us worse, and it would not be something we could get to deal with over time. It would just impact us in a way that was very harmful. And so the fact that it was residential was something that made it accessible to us in the first place. And then on top of that, it was that knowledge that we would have a room that was ours, that when we got overwhelmed, or if we had flashbacks we couldn't manage, if we had sensory overwhelm, if we had like too many difficulties from the anxiety, from the CPTSD, if the disabilities were flaring up, all of the things that were variables of unknown to me that made me worried of like how would we cope in this environment, we were like, well, we'd go to the space that was ours. So it made it possible. It made it possible for us to go to college. We've never been able to go to college before because of all these barriers and because of the way that other colleges are not accessible and do not have the considerations of these things. So that was already a massive difference. And then when we were on short courses, because of the way that trauma literally physiologically wires your brain and the impacts from it, it feels very unsafe to be present and visible to people in any emotional states that aren't kind of perfect, for lack of no emotional state is perfect, and not all of them are welcome in reality, right? But your brain doesn't know that when you've been through these kind of experiences, and it can make you mask a lot and feel like, you know, I'm only safe to be observed if I can smile, or I'm only safe to be observed if I can, you know, not be upset, or all these things, right? Because that makes sense. And so on the short courses, it was very much something that we could just like, I only have to mask for this amount of hours a day, and then we can go outside in the garden into nature, we can go up to our room, we can avoid people. You know, it was like you could just hold your breath for so long, and then I could decompress. And that was really what we needed at the time. Those were the best tools we had. The thing about the personal social development courses here is that we could build different skill sets. So over time, there were courses on how, like, coping with trauma and putting into practice ways to change your neural circuits so that your brain can perceive something different, so that you can behave differently, so that you can feel differently, and so that your association to triggers over time gets rewired. And we were already doing this from our own personal therapy anyway, but the practical application within community, especially residential community here at Fircroft, has made that come on in leaps and bounds. Through, obviously our work has been so important, but it's given us an environment that nowhere else has to be able to improve these things at a rate that is phenomenal. It's been really, really life-changing. And it's not just us, because we've heard stories from so many different peers and so many different classmates saying the same thing. Like, this gave them a chance, a second chance, where the education systems outside of here had failed them. This was the common story of people who end up here, that it supports in places where mainstream education has failed to support. So in our experiences, we did that for so long that it started becoming safer and safer to be seen with more emotions. And then when we applied for the access course, it shifted entirely, because you're here too consistently. You don't have the energy to mask like that. And we work very hard to not mask in our day-to-day life anyway, but as it's a protective measure in the brain, it just happens, or it used to just happen. But through being here so consistently, you end up in positions where, like, your classmates see you like panicking about an assignment. You know, they see you not having had enough sleep because a submission, like a deadline for submission, is due, and they see you sort of like vulnerable, saying like, I'm not sure about my work, can you look at it? You know, as long as you put in the work to be visible, this gives you an environment and an opportunity to be seen, and not just to be seen with acceptable perfect range of emotions that masks and suppresses everything else, but it gives you the opportunity to be seen for your authentic self and for all the emotions that you feel. And you learn over time that no emotion has to be perfect, you know, that masking isn't necessary here, because every time we were panicking about an assignment, or the CPTSD got too unmanageable and symptoms flared up, or our disabilities made it so that we could like not really walk around and not stand, we never got people pathologizing us or judging us. All we ever got was people saying, what do you need? And with no force, you know, wanting to support us, to empower us to be able to be okay. And because of that, like, consistency that people would see you at, because of the residential aspect, people see you in all of these moments and throughout the night, throughout the day, you know, and it breaks down these barriers and creates this level of communal shared vulnerability that starts to build resilience within yourself, being seen in those states. It's changed the way that we can show up and interact in community and in relation with groups of people in a way that we have never had before. That it can be so much deeper and so much more authentic now. I don't feel like I'm just holding my breath. I feel like I'm like relaxed to let myself just be. And more, I think that's becoming the case. And it is completely because of the residential aspect of this college. Allowing us to like support in the work we do, it changes you in ways that you wouldn't imagine, and it gives you the opportunity to, I feel so much more confident around people. Not like confident in any state, confident doing stuff I'm unsure of, confident doing things that are new. I have this level of trust in myself to be able to manage whatever I feel, that it doesn't feel like I'm holding on to comfortable emotions and scared of them passing, or scared of people seeing me when disabilities affect me, or when there are barriers, you know. No, but it's like, and more, it's not just you. I think like more and more we've been able to switch and talk to each other like openly, and more of us have learned to be able to do that. And like to have panic attacks and to have like dissociative states and stuff, it becomes okay to like not manage things well, or to not be able to manage things no matter how well you're doing it. And it's made us like care less about people's responses when they don't understand. Like, it's gotten easier to just record conversations that we have because we're having them. I don't shut down because the camera's on, or think about like what people who don't understand might think if they watch the video. It's like, it's so irrelevant. And I think because of that like sense of belonging in a community that really sees us, it helps to know we're so grounded in our reality. Yeah, I'd even agree. It's very non-pathologizing, not prescriptive of what someone has to feel or how they have to present, as long as your behaviours are safe to be in relation with other people. Self-expression is pretty freely unjudged. And I think a lot of what's not understood, unless you've been within it, is like, without the way Fircroft works, exactly as it does, it's understanding, it's value-driven, neurodiversity affirming, non-hierarchical, trauma-informed, like community-driven, supportive essence that is woven throughout every interaction, and the ethos that is lived and practiced, that's then transferred to every student and internalized and practiced through members of staff who clearly do internal work on themselves to be able to do that consistently. Like, without the way that all of this college functions, including massively the residential aspect, but all of it, we would not be doing this. We would not be progressing to university. We are progressing to university because of this. It's made us able to engage in society in a way that we hadn't been able to before. Because without this, we've done a lot of work, so I don't want to predict where we may or may not be. I know things would be harder. I don't want to doubt our capabilities, but at the same time, I can tell you what was. What was us fighting to be okay in a really difficult and not understanding society, no matter which pockets we found. Like, home ed community was beautiful, queer community was beautiful. There's pockets, right? And we ended up with a lot of issues with substance misuse and addiction, because that's a really common symptom of trauma when a world doesn't leave you many other pathways to deal with it or teach you how to cope. And the residential college seems like it's compared in the way it works to other colleges, but really they're incomparable. They're uncomparable. They cannot be compared because it's not the same thing. The students that are able to access this and thrive here are not going to be the same students that you see in other colleges, because those colleges have, and those mainstream education systems have so often failed them and failed to give them the supports they need to thrive. And so we, at least, went through addiction services. I know a lot of people repeatedly end up cycling through addiction services and really unable to progress in anything that changes their lives as profoundly as this place has for us.